Okay, next I want you to realize something, and it has to do with how you see your body. In order to heal, you have to learn how to trust your body. But most of us who've experienced trauma learn to one degree or another to distrust and separate ourselves from our body. But I want you to know that your body will be your guide in your healing process because it comes from your body. Think about this. When you cut your skin or when you break a bone, you don't have to tell your body how to heal itself, right? Like if you break your skin, you cut your skin, you don't have to tell your body to send white blood cells up to be able to repair the two pieces of broken skin, to form a scab and to heal the tissue underneath. No, your body knows how to repair itself. All you have to do is give it the right environment. And all of the systems are already in place. So your body is fully capable of healing as long as you give it those right conditions. And I want to tell you the same thing applies to your mind, body, soul. The problem is that you've lost touch with or you haven't been taught the proper conditions that will allow your mind, body, soul to heal itself. What you've been taught has something to do, it's like a metaphor. I like to think about a truck on an old country road. I'm sure you've seen in movies, or you can imagine a road like this, or one that even has deeper ruts. You could put a truck on that road and drive it down the road without even touching the steering wheel, and it wouldn't leave the road. And if you think about it, like the guilt, shame, fear, and self-criticism that we talked about in the attitude toward yourself video, if you're already programmed to do that, and that's the environment that you put yourself in, you can actually be on autopilot with that non-healing kind of negative behavior that your thinking patterns get developed into. But the really good news is that you can create new tracks, right? So there's a specific process for creating new neural pathways that lead to healing. And once you get on that healing path, your body develops its own momentum in the direction of healing. I just want you to think about the possibility that when we start moving you in the direction of healing, I've seen it over and over again in my practice. My clients, their bodies and minds, something happens that self-healing process starts to develop its own momentum. And then you can move forward off of that other road into a road where self-healing is a natural part of your living, breathing, moving process. Talking about feeling feelings in the body I've found that it's something that people have difficulty with. So one of the things that people will express to me is that when I say, this is the question, and I'm going to ask you to think about it for yourself, is where do you feel your feelings in your body? When I ask that question, people answer two ways. There's actually three answers, and only one of them is really correct. One of the things that they say is I feel my feelings in my brain or in my head. And actually, feelings don't happen in your head. Thoughts happen in your head. So if you're saying, I feel my feelings in my brain, then that's a clue to you that you're actually not separating your thoughts from your feelings. Thoughts are usually expressed in a sentence. Feelings can be expressed in one word, like happiness, sadness, nervous, frustrated, agitated, dejected, elated. Those are feelings words. They don't happen in your head. The other thing that people tell me is that they feel feelings in their shoulders or in their chest. And what that is pain. So actually, your body is constructed in such a way that you're supposed to be able to feel feelings here. It's a really subtle feeling. So if you close your eyes right now and pay attention to the feelings that you have in your body, you could even pause the video to do this. Pay attention to the feelings that are going on right here. What you will feel is some sort of subtle motion or some sort of subtle movement that happens that if we unzipped you and looked inside, we wouldn't see any movement. But when you're paying attention to that part of your body and there are unresolved feelings there, or there are feelings that you have about something that you feel strongly about, it'll be right here. So listen, pay attention, listen, but not with your ears. What is the motion? And then once you've identified the movement, then look for the feeling word that seems to fit the activity in your belly. That's where we feel feelings in our body. If you're having pain in your shoulders or in your neck or anywhere else in your body that is usually it's tension. And the reason we feel those feelings is your body was created for you to be able to pay attention to what's happening right in here, to be able to know whether you're safe or unsafe in your environment, to know whether somebody you're with is a friend or a foe. That's all of that happens right in here. But we don't have a practice of listening to what's going on right here. Even meditation apps don't show you to listen to what's happening right here. So if you pay attention and listen right here, you can actually be aware of what's going on in your feeling self before it gets to a high alarm rate. So if we think about why you have tension in your shoulders, why is your chest tight, why do you get headaches? Most of the time it's because you haven't been listening to the quiet subtleties that go on right in here where the feelings live in your body. And so your body doesn't have any choice but to send you a signal that you will listen to, and that is usually in the form of tension, bringing your shoulders up, crossing your eyebrows, feeling pain. So what I would like you to do is, if you're having pain in your body, if you're having tension, recognize that that's because your body is trying to tell you that something going on at your feelings level that you should be paying attention to. And practice every day, tuning in right here. Sometimes people tell me, and sometimes it's been weeks, people will go for a long period of time without having plugged in to what their feelings are. And if you've learned how to shut that down, then you're going to be really good at keeping it shut down. So people will sometimes come back to me and say, there's nothing there, I got nothing. And I encourage them to persist. So if you persist, something will show up.
Now that I've shown you where your feelings are in your body and how to begin to understand them, I want to talk a bit about why we choose sometimes not to feel. The first reason is family rules. Now, the family rules can be spoken or unspoken. It reminds me of a time about 7 years ago when I saw a woman near the subways in Los Angeles had just been through a traumatic experience. Clearly, her and her son, who was 7 years old, looked pretty upset. She had him by the hand and was kind of pulling him behind her and said, "We don't cry, we just push forward." So he was crying, but she was pushing forward and she was teaching him that it's not okay to cry. There are also unspoken ways of doing that, and that reminds me of a mom she had 2 children and their father had just died, and she was trying really, really hard to be everything to them and super cheerful. So she never let them see her grieve. She never let them see her cry. And I was working with the little girl who was about 8 at the time, and she didn't heal until a session where I said to her, "It's okay to cry." So at the end of therapy, I asked her to draw a picture of the thing that was most helpful, and she drew a picture of us sitting together where I'm telling her it's okay to cry, and she's saying it is. She said that was the most helpful. And it goes back to mom trying to always be cheerful and giving this unspoken message that it's not okay to cry. So you want to look at your own family rules. Are there spoken and unspoken rules, and what are they that prevented you from feeling your feelings? You also want to think about potentially history of illness. So when we cope with illness and pain in our bodies, sometimes we cope with that by shutting ourselves off from our feelings. The problem with that is that it will prevent you from knowing anything that's going on in your body in the future. So it prevents you from being able to be your healthiest, because one of the body's warning systems that something is wrong is pain. And so that's one of the things that you would look for in your own history as well. Potentially also habits with food. So one of the things that I sort of laugh about and joke about is that in my family we had the hamburger solution. So we never really talked about difficult feelings. We never talked about things that were going on in the family, although there was a lot of really difficult stuff happening in the family. And feelings were addressed and managed by just the family used to sit down and just dig into these ridiculously huge hamburgers and fries or onion rings, and feelings got sublimated that way. One of the things that's true with overeating is that as long as you're chewing, if this is one of your coping strategies, you don't feel as long as you chew. So that's another way to look at if you're a person who doesn't feel. The last one that I have listed here is trauma, and that's specifically the freeze or fawn reactions. Those are the reactions that we have where we freeze or we just comply with what's being asked of us without allowing ourselves to feel. And so that's another place to look at. And I'm pausing because in the freeze and fawn response, we often don't even know that we're doing that. So you have to start watching yourself if you freeze or fawn to know that, and look at how that habit is reinforced every time you do it when you're safe but feel triggered. So I added this slide. Let's see if it can work. It does. Yay. Okay. So just like if you watch this image, the soil begins to move before you see the plant coming up. The habits that happen in our ability to shut down our feelings are just like at the beginning of that movie. If we imagine that the seed is hidden feelings that we've pushed away, here it comes again. Let me play it for you one more time. As soon as the soil begins to move, we know subconsciously that a feeling's coming up, and we'll kick into our preferred method of keeping the feeling shut down. So right there, before the plant can up, before the feelings can come up, as soon as the soil begins to move, we hop into our preferred action that keeps us from feeling. It happens that fast and that outside of our awareness because the habit keeps us from really feeling feelings, and it's been practiced over and over again. It means that we have to practice paying attention to when the soil is moving so that we can feel our feelings and move forward in our healing journey. The way you make feelings safer is by recognizing that a history of trauma has caused you to believe that any and all of your feelings, especially the ones that are old, are dangerous. So what do I mean by old feelings? What I'm referring to is the rules and events that aren't valid anymore but feel real because your body has registered them as something that has to be followed in order to make sure that you're safe. Like the examples I gave you with the little boy and girl whose mothers taught each of them that crying isn't okay, the little boy will probably grow up to avoid sad feelings that would cause him to cry. The little girl learned that crying works to make her feel better and knows that it's a good tool now. But the boy will register danger in his body about crying about crying instead of moving forward. The little girl did register danger in her body until she learned that crying is okay. So if you have the habit of avoiding your feelings in your body because of fear of If you have a habit of avoiding your feelings in your body because of fear of illness, this will contribute to further illness unless you recognize that the fears don't protect you. Only proactive habits will. The next one is the Clean Plate Club. And I don't know about you, but I was an involuntary member of the Clean Plate Club from the time that I grew up. And from the time that I grew up. Here was the rule. If you put it on your plate, you have to eat it. This put priority on the value of not wasting food over the more important value of listening to my body so that I can take care of myself when it comes to food. This is a really subtle message that effectively overrides your ability to listen to your body if you were if you were taught that wasting food is wrong. The final question I have listed here is, are you safe now? Look around and evaluate. If you're safe objectively, and there's no likelihood that someone around you wants to harm you, then it's highly likely that anytime you feel unsafe, those feelings are old. Anytime you feel unsafe, it's a really good idea to look around and ask yourself if those feelings are about your current situation or if they're old. When it comes to learning to trust your body, I also want you to look back at those times when you were able to trust your body. See, all of us were born with a sense of wisdom in our bodies, even when something was happening that was not okay. Your body told you so. Your body signaled you to tell you that you were not safe. You need to identify when you were able to trust your body because the signals in your body were right, that you weren't safe. This is a really important part of learning to trust your body now. It's because likely if something happened where you weren't safe and your body told you that, there was also someone telling you that it's okay and everything's fine, even though your body was telling you that you were in danger. Getting back to trusting your body when it tells you that and honoring your body for telling you that when it was actually true is a very, very important part of developing trust in your body and recognizing that you could always trust your body because you've always had body wisdom. Part of the process of learning to trust your body is also listening so that you can categorize different feelings into different categories. When we feel triggered but we're actually safe, we can look at things like being in the Clean Plate Club, most of our grown-up relationships that are actually safe, our relationship with our food, our expression of emotions like crying. We can look at those things and start to give ourselves permission to reevaluate the rules or circumstances that led to feeling unsafe. So we can learn to be safe around stopping before we're stuffed, around interacting in healthy ways in relationships, with our food, and with the healthy expression of emotion. In actually or potentially dangerous situations, fear is a healthy response that encourages caution and making decisions that increase safety. In both situations, it's our feelings that guide us toward the direction of healing or the direction of appropriate self-protection. One of the last things that I want to tell you about feelings is that sometimes the conversation about feelings leads trauma survivors to a tremendous amount of fear because you're not used to feeling them. Let me say this. You shut your feelings down because your circumstances were scary and it was too dangerous to respond with the appropriate feelings instead of shutting down. You felt your feelings though. But just because you push them away doesn't mean that they go away. There is a law called the conservation of energy. That means that nothing is created and nothing goes away, which means that in terms of feelings, your feelings in your body that you feel at one time or another have to be spent or they will stay inside your body, creating pressure, just like a pressure cooker that's on heat. The longer you carry it, the more pressure you will feel internally, and the more likely that you'll experience health issues, and the more likely that your internal pressure will lead to habits and behaviors that you don't really like. Things like overeating, self sabotage, boiling until you get to the point where you're yelling at your kids or you can't stop crying, because you can only handle the buildup of that pressure for so long before you have to resort to behaviors that release some of it. The other thing to know is that you already survived whatever deposited all of those feelings in your body. You were younger and smaller and less powerful then. That means that when you were younger and smaller, those feelings and all of that was much more scary. But what actually happened then that hurt you then can't actually hurt you now, can't really hurt you now, but your brain will tell you that it can. And those feelings about what happened can't hurt you any more than they did in the first place. But you carry them around with you. And what you carry around with you does hurt you. So why not look at them so that you can release them? A lot of trauma survivors who've put their feelings away also believe that allowing themselves to feel again is going to feel like this: absolutely overwhelming and out of control. There are two things I want to tell you about this. When feelings come on and they're overwhelming, it might feel like a huge tidal wave, but feelings really do act like the waves you see in the ocean. At first, the wave is big, but then, just like at the beach, once they hit the shore, they get really quiet and then they recede. That's the natural course of feelings as well. They act just like a wave, and when they're big, they're scary, but they don't stay that way. The second thing I want to tell you is that since you are really good at keeping your feelings locked away, this is a skill that you can use while you're healing your trauma. When your feelings get too overwhelming, use your skill for shutting them down to take temporary breaks when you need to. You have the ability to look at them and put them away, because putting them away is already in your toolbox. Now it's time to learn how to bring them out so you can deal with them, knowing that they will never overwhelm you completely because you have the skill necessary to prevent them from doing that when you temporarily put them away.
When you click the download below, it's going to ask you to think about what you've learned about your body and challenge you with some new beliefs and ask you to journal about what those new beliefs are about how to allow your body to heal and how to trust that process. So click on the little link for the download below. Let's get started.